You mute the notifications. You don't post the countdown story. When someone asks what you're doing for your birthday, you already have the answer ready. Nothing really. Not sadness, not exactly. Just a low hum of wanting the day to pass quietly. Most people assume this comes from disliking attention or disliking celebration itself. But watch closer, and that explanation starts to fall apart. The same person avoiding their birthday might love hosting parties, might crave a spotlight on stage, might post constantly online. So attention isn't the problem. Something else is happening on this particular day. Here's the strange thing about a birthday. It's one of the only days in the calendar that forces you to look at yourself as an object, not just a participant in your own life. Psychologists call this objective self-awareness, the shift from simply living your life to stepping outside it and evaluating it the way another person might. Most of the time you avoid this. You're too busy being inside your life to study it from a distance. A birthday doesn't let you avoid it. It's scheduled, unavoidable. Everyone around you treats it as a checkpoint whether you asked for one or not. For a lot of people, that moment of self-focus lasts a few seconds and disappears. But for some, it opens something heavier, a quiet audit of where they actually are compared to where they thought they'd be. That comparison has a name. Psychologists call it self-discrepancy, the gap between who you are right now and who you expected to become. And that gap comes in two very different shapes. One is the distance between your current self and your ideal self, the person you hoped to be, the dreams you set for yourself years ago. When a birthday exposes that gap, what tends to surface is sadness, a kind of grief for a version of your life that hasn't happened yet and might not. The other is the distance between your current self and your ought self, the person you feel obligated to be, based on what family, culture, or your younger self expected of you by now. When a birthday exposes that gap, the emotion is different. Less sadness, more anxiety. Sometimes guilt, like you're behind on a debt nobody wrote down but everyone remembers. So when someone avoids their birthday, they're often not avoiding a party, they're avoiding an audit, a day that quietly asks, "So where are you now?" and doesn't accept, "I'm working on it," as an answer. Here's what changes the whole picture. This isn't avoidance out of weakness, it's a form of self-protection. If a day is reliably going to trigger an uncomfortable comparison between where you are and where you thought you'd be, then skipping the ritual, keeping it small, letting it pass unnoticed, that's a reasonable way to manage the discomfort. Not everyone who does this is depressed or stuck or in crisis. Many are simply people whose inner timeline runs a little different from the one they were handed, and you haven't yet made peace with that difference. It's worth being honest here. No one has run a study specifically on people who avoid their birthdays. What we have is decades of research on self-discrepancy and self-awareness, and this is a reasonable extension of it, not a proven fact stamped onto every candleblower who says, "Let's not make a big deal of it." Some people just prefer quiet days. Some associate birthdays with a loss, a specific memory, nothing to do with self-evaluation at all. Human behavior rarely has one clean cause. But for the people where this pattern does fit, there's something almost tender underneath the avoidance. It isn't that they don't want to be celebrated, it's that celebration on this particular day comes bundled with an evaluation they don't feel ready to sit through. Sometimes what looks like indifference is actually a very careful kind of self-defense. And maybe that reframes the whole thing. The goal was never to force yourself to love your birthday or to perform enthusiasm you don't feel. It's noticing what the day is actually asking of you, and asking whether the standard you're measuring yourself against was ever a fair one to begin with. An ideal self built at 22 doesn't have to still be binding at 35. An ought self built from someone else's expectations doesn't have to keep collecting interest forever. Maybe the point isn't to stop noticing the gap. Maybe it's to stop treating the gap as a verdict. So this year, if the day comes and that same quiet resistance shows up, the urge to let it pass unnoticed, it might be worth asking, gently, what exactly you're afraid the day will reveal. Not to fix it in one sitting, just to know it a little better than you did before. If this made you see your own birthdays a little differently, you might enjoy exploring the next video.